Kate here for Women Who CNC. Today, I want to talk to you about a one-on-one session that I had that I thought was pretty cool, so I wanted to share. So this gentleman, John, that I am working with, is had originally sent me over two files. One was the IU basketball court, and one was the Purdue basketball court. And so I thought it would be really cool to show you a little bit about the design. And how we're going to be laying it out to do an epoxy inlay and how things need to be laid out and put on different layers and then running separate toolpaths so then that way we can get the desired results. So in this one-on-one, you will see all of the different things that John gets to experience as somewhat of a new CNCer. He has a couple CNCs, but he's still relatively new to the field. So I'm really excited for you guys to see this. So welcome to our one-on-one, and I hope you guys learned something. All right, talk to you soon. When you looked at any of this, did any of this make sense?
Well, some, I don't understand how you decide which, and the tool pathing, how you decide which bits to use and when to use them.
Okay, so that is a great question. First off, let's talk, before we get into the toolpath, let's look at the actual design and the layer work, so then you can then understand how I set up the toolpaths for you as well.
Sure.
Okay, so right up front, you see everything is on the court. If you remember the last time we met, we actually, these circles were not circular. They were like, because it was an image, we had done a trace bitmap, it was kind of a hot mess. The P, everything was a little bit different. We had intersecting lines, kind of like we do here, but I had to put those all on different layers in order for us to get the epoxy laid out in different layers for separate colors, because we're using all three Purdue colors, the black, the gray, and the gold. Okay. Quick note about when you're working with epoxy and you're trying to get true colors. So I just did a sign very similar to this. I think I might have been working on the IU tattered flag, which was the crimson and cream. And I think I showed you that briefly. But what you can actually do when you're working with epoxy is, if you want to go to like Sherwin-Williams, that's like my favorite go-to store for matching exact paints. So your Sherwin-Williams store in where you're located, I don't want to really reveal that here, but you could go and you could call the store here in Indiana or in Lafayette, where Purdue is located, and say, hey, do you have the Purdue color code for the Boilermakers gold? And they are in the Boilermakers gray, and they'll probably say yes, and then they can mix that up for you. And what you can do with that paint is you can actually take that paint and little globs of it, and you can put it into your epoxy and then mix it up, so you'll have the exact colors that you need to make this like an accurate representation.
So you don't use tints then, you use actual paint.
Well, for this particular thing, when I'm trying to color match like to the nines, I actually use just paint. So when I did my IU sign, I have a crimson and I have a crimson and a cream. And then I just take, I don't know, I would probably say, if I'm mixing, let me grab this cup right here. So these are the cups that I use. I buy these at you can buy them at Lowe's, Amazon, wherever your heart's desire. But I usually do about 18 ounces when I want to pour something like this. So if you're pouring one color, now if you're doing the Boilermakers, you can see everything that's in gold already on the screen that's already displayed. So for that, I would probably do maybe like 6 ounces, depending on how big you're going to make this piece. So you can resize everything if you're not happy with the size here, and I'll show you how to do that. But for that, I would mix about 6 ounces and then maybe about a tablespoon of paint.
Now, is that water-based paint or oil-based?
I think it is an oil-based paint. Let me grab, I think I still have mine over here. Or I might not have. Hang on one second. Let me show you what I work with. So this is actually satin. So it is a latex, so it's a water-based.
Okay.
See, I've even got it marked IU cream.
Yeah.
But this here is the Sherwin-Williams brand. It's called Latitude. I want to say this is roughly, I don't know if there's a price on here, but I think it's about like maybe $20 to $30
Yeah.
for this pint. So it's a really good paint, but it lasts a long time, especially if you're planning on doing multiple projects or making several of these. So I've had this paint for, I'd say at least a year and a half. And as long as I give it a good shake and a really good stir and make sure everything's well incorporated, it goes into the epoxy beautifully. You just have to mix your epoxy depending on what you're using, the recommended standards. And then I usually add a couple of minutes. So if it says 3, I'll add 2 more minutes just to make sure that the paint is fully incorporated.
Okay.
Okay. So that's just kind of like a little side thing that I like to share, because these projects really do kind of depend on the colors, because if you're just using like a random gold, that's not really going to give you the look that you want. All right, so on the court here, we're going to talk about the layers. So we have this, I have everything labeled out for you as far as first pour, second pour, and then I tried to label everything according to what needs done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of work backwards. I'm going to turn off the layers that we don't need so you can really get a full visual of what needs to happen. Okay, so right now we just have this black on, okay?
Okay.
Let me pull this down a little bit. Pardon me, by the way, I have cold, so my voice is a little funky. But in here is this is where you're going to pour all of your black epoxy. So with this being said, I'll close this and we'll come over here to our toolpaths. So I wasn't sure what tools you kind of have in your CNC arsenal, so I just picked what I thought would be a good, like, middle of the ground tool you would probably have. So for the first pocketing toolpath, we're going to pocket out all of this. Okay, so this is going to be your black epoxy. You're going to pour everything that you see where this is done. Okay, and that's all going to be done there. And then these 1/8 inch, you're going to come back in and it's going to basically tighten up all of your tighten up all of your corners, tighten up all the radiuses, make sure everything's nice and tight.
So that's before the pour.
Yes.
The quarter.
No, well, you have the quarter first and then you have the 1/8 inch.
Yeah, and then the pour.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So stepping into the toolpaths just a little bit so you understand what is going on here. So I put the cut depth of 0.27, and then we're starting in the pocketing toolpath, we're starting with a 1/4 inch end mill, and it's going to go out and it's going to hog everything out, the majority of it. Then it's going to step down into the 1/8 inch end mill. But the unique thing about this pocketing toolpath, and when you add a second clearance tool, is that it's not going to go back and do like a second pocketing of everything that the 1/4 inch covered. It's only going, that 1/8 inch bit's only going to go where the 1/4 inch end mill couldn't get.
The edges.
Yes, it's going to go through and it's going to clean up. So let me see if I can, let me close this out real quick. And I'm going to turn this off. So you can see like the little arrows that are going around. So this is basically where the 1/8 inch end mill is going to go and clean up. It's just the edges because it's cleaning up all of these radiuses or corners where that 1/4 inch end mill wasn't, the radius on it wasn't quite tight enough.
Okay.
Okay. So from here, you're going to go in and you're going to pour your black epoxy. All right. So that's the first pour. The second pour, I'm going to turn that first pour off, and I'm going to turn our toolpaths off just by unchecking this over here on our toolpath side. Okay, so now we're working with a blank screen. We're going to come in next and we're going to do our second pour. Because right now, this is kind of a little bit of a visual game here we have to play. So you have to remember your whole board is all of your baseboard is black. Okay, so we're just going to pour the black. We're not looking to flood the entire board or anything like that. We're basically just sorry, we're just going to fill in this black here, okay? So that's what's you have to, like I said, visually, this is all black. Where the gold is, that's when you're going to come in, and I did a 60-degree V-bit.
So I'm not going to resurface this or anything between?
No, nope. So we're basically pouring the epoxy because we're carving everything out.
Okay.
So we're pouring it, we're filling it back in. So think of it like your board, and then the center of it's filled in, it's black, and we're going to let that cure. Okay, so you're probably going to need about 24 to 48 hours, depending on what type of an epoxy you use, which we can talk about that too. Once that's cured, then you're going to come back in. You're going to leave your project on the CNC. I don't want you to take it off, okay? This is a kind of a few day project, if you will.
That's okay.
So then you're going to come back in once the epoxy's cured. You're going to load up your 60-degree V-bit, which is this profile here, and you're going to carve this. You're going to carve your Boilermakers. You're going to carve your little lines and your B here. Okay, you're going to carve all of that. Then you're going to pour your gold epoxy.
Okay.
Okay, so right now we've got our black quart, and then we've got our Boilermakers, our little half quart lines, and then our two little B's here. Okay.
Yep.
So that's done. So what we did to choose that toolpath is we wanted to do an outline of the B. Remember,
Yep.
the B is not, wasn't a solid color. It's just that those two outlines.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what you maybe want to invest in, like some syringes or something I really like that's kind of like easy to use, especially when you're working with colored epoxies, is you can actually go to the Dollar Tree or Dollar General or whatever and buy like one of those like squirt bottles for like ketchup or mustard at picnics, stuff like that. And you can cut, or you can, I think the tip is already, yeah, it's already opened up, but it's fine. But you can use those, and you basically just kind of squirt it out really slowly in there. Okay.
Okay. So you
So
don't
it keeps the syringe from getting gunked up, because sometimes people like don't work quickly enough with the epoxy that they've chosen, and the syringes get gummed up, and then you can tend to go through several of those. So I like those little like squeeze bottles from the dollar store. Plus they're like $1. So, you know, if you have to throw it away, you have to throw it away. So for this one, it's just a
use a squeegee or
profile.
something.
What's that?
You don't use a squeegee or something afterwards to level it.
No, not really, because
So if you have some excess, you're going to take it off later with the flattening.
yes. Yep,
Okay.
you got it. And so that's why I chose to carve the depth at, I chose to carve the original depth at the point 2.6. It's just a little bit below that. But for the Boilermakers, you can, so there's a couple different options. You mentioned surfacing, but this is just my personal go-to kind of choice, is what I would do is I would actually just sand it. And I mean, if you want to surface it, that's fine. But for this particular instance, we're only going down 0.1. And so if you do very much surfacing at all, you risk almost chipping out some of the Boilermakers and things like that.
Yep.
And you also have to remember, you're using a V-bit. We're using the profiling toolpath, which is going around, but we're using a V-bit tool. So the pass is going to be even shallower at the actual like center of it.
Yep.
Okay.
I get that.
So make sense?
Yep.
All right, very good. Please stop me if I'm going too fast. And
good so far.
All right, very good. Okay, so I chose a 60-degree V-bit, and the reason for that is because of the size of the job. If you remember, let me go back. It's been a minute even for me. So let's look at our job size here just really quickly. So we're working with a 36 by 18, so a relatively good size project. But the reason that I chose the 60-degree over a 90 or a 30 is because 60-degree is kind of like that sweet spot angle. It's just enough of an angle, but it's not too much. I feel like the 90-degree would almost bleed like the letters in together, because you have to remember the angle is wider and we're going down 0.1. So if we go down too far with that 90 degree, what's going to happen is your B is kind of going to bleed over into the O.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, because we're going, we're stepping over with that. So that's why I chose to use the 60 degree, because we still have this amount of space in here because that tool is just going to come down here. We're working on the line. So it'll be great. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let me pull this back to the center, and I'm going to minimize our toolpath commands. Sorry, I keep moving the cameras around on us. All right. So once that's done, you're going to have your black is
Yep.
done. Your gold is now done. And so now we're going to switch to the 30 degree V-bit for the Gene Katie. I'm pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Gene Katie. Okay.
Is that like an engraving bit, or what is that?
So a 30 degree V-bit is just the same as a 60 degree V-bit. It's just a steeper angle. So typically you'll have a 30, 60, and a 90, like if you buy any type of V-bit or sign making kit, something of that nature. I personally use the IDC Woodcraft bits, and I can share my code with you if you want to save a little bit on your purchase. So for that, the 30 degree V-bit, again, it's the size of the lettering, it's the size of the vectors that we're working with. And because these vectors are so stinking small, I did not feel like a 60 degree V-bit would do this justice, if you will, especially down here in this Gene Katie. I felt like the 60 degree, because these A's have this like little bitty inner vector here, and the D, again, the width of the bit is really critical here, because if you use too wide of a bit, what will happen is the center of the D will basically become mute. Like it won't look like it's even there. So then when you go to pour the epoxy, it's going to look like a solid D or a solid A, and it's not going to give you the results that you want. So that's why I chose the 30 degree, because it's a lot finer of a tip. Okay. For this one, for this V carve here, let's open this up and look at it. If you notice, this is a V carve toolpath. Okay, this is not our pocketing toolpath, and this is not a profile toolpath. We are not going outside the line. I want to actually carve the letters of what we're doing. Okay, so like in the Boilermakers, we're going outside the lines. This, I want to carve out Katie Court and then the Gene Katie. Okay, so there, I didn't go the full depth of 0.1. I feel like 0.1 would be a little bit aggressive for as small as the font is. Okay, so that's why I went with a 0.07. That's typically, as a sign maker, that's the depth that I like to work with.
Okay.
I feel like when you're working with these really small fonts, the deeper that you go, you start to lose the lettering. And that's why I suggested sanding over surfacing, especially with something like this. Now you could surface if you wanted to. Well, you know what? Let's pause on that note. We'll talk about that when we get to the end here, so we don't like throw a kink in our rhythm of what we're doing here. All right. So up next is the gray. This is the inner piece. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off all of these other layers here. Oh, no, that's okay. I need to turn off my toolpaths. My apologies.
So one
Okay.
quick question before you go on.
Sure.
When you did the carving for the Katie Court and the Gene Katie signature, that's a black pour, correct?
Yes.
So you could have done that at the same time you did the pocketing. You could have the pocketing and then done switch bits and done the Gene Katie and Katie Court and done both black pours at the same time. Is that not correct?
Well, you know what? Let me go back and look. Okay. I'm trying to remember. Ugh, I can't remember. I thought I had an image of that somewhere on here. Ugh, did I not save it? I may have to go back in and re-download that. What color was the Katie Court black?
It's a good question. I don't.
Okay, you know what? I know how we figure this out. All right, so let me go back here and okay, so we did our first pour. Okay, no, we did not. Yes, to answer your question, you are correct, because if we go back and we look at our pocketing toolpath, we are only pocketing out here because this, remember, is going to be your wood, whatever you chose to use, because I know you had mentioned you were going to like make it look like
Yes.
you were going to glue a bunch of separate pieces of wood together
Yes.
to make it look like a ball court.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, to answer your question to that, that is absolutely something that you could do.
Yeah, to save one step there.
Yes, so you could pocket all of this out, and then you could come back to your layers panel and you could turn on your Gene Katie,
Yeah.
switch your bit,
yeah,
and then do your black. Absolutely. That's a great question.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we will go ahead and turn off our pocketing toolpaths here. Let me turn this off. And let me turn off the... Okay, so here is, if I remember correctly, this is going to be a pocketing profile here.
Okay.
And this was going to go down to the cut depth of 0.25, not to the pull 0.26, because that's not really necessary. Remember, the black is at 0.26, and so there's no need to really like get rid of all of that.
Okay.
So we're just going to carve down a little bit to 0.25, and we're going to use an 1/8 inch down cut, and basically we are getting rid of all of that inner layer there. Okay, so I'll preview that visible. All right, so if I go back into the 2D view and I turn on the black, so stay with me here for just a minute. All right, I think this is where it kind of threw me through a loop, because I had to do some offsetting on the P in order to get the gray boundary.
Okay.
Let me think here. Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to remember, because so we have the black is part of the P, like the base of the P, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all originally pocketed out, right? So we come in, we're pocketing this out. It's going to pocket out the main base of the P. And then once that's done, you'll have to do the pocket for the gray. Let me turn these two off so I can just double check my work. Because the gray just had the boundary, right? And the center of the P is gold.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so this is the inner gold. Okay, so I think what I need to do is I need to select. All right, this is where things got a little tricky for me. All right, so it was this outline. That was black and that was all pocketed. See, this stuff gets a little tricky because see how these lines run together, and that's why I had to put things on layers because you have intersecting vectors.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why your layers panel comes in really, really handy, especially when you're doing epoxy work, because you have to know what you're cutting through in order to get your final result.
Yep.
Right?
I get
Right.
that.
All right, so I'm going to turn our first pour off, and then the 1/8 inch. Okay, let me double check. Okay, so I feel like this should have been, I should have done a pocketing, I should have selected the pocket for the gray. All right, so I'm going to redo something really quickly here because I made a boo-boo. So what actually needed to happen was I needed to do this outside boundary, and I'm holding down my shift key and I'm selecting this inner boundary. But when I select this inner boundary, it's grouped. So what I need to do is do Control U for ungrouping, and I'm going to select this outer boundary and this inner boundary. Nope, it didn't ungroup it. Gosh darn it. All right, I'm going to select all of it, Control U, ungrouping. Okay, select the outer boundary. Here we go once again. Zooming in, and I'm grabbing this interior boundary. All right, and then I'm going to grab this and this, because the only thing that I really want pocketed is the border of the P.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yes. Okay, so let me double check and see if my 1/8 inch bit will actually fit in there. And let's preview that visible. Oh, you know what? We need to reset the preview. And let me select just that one. Preview and preview visible. Okay. Yes, I remember doing this because I had to work with this offset as far as the width to make sure that I could get the 1/8 inch border in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the black P will be carved black, and then you're going to come in with this 1/8 inch. You're going to pocket out this area in this inner, which is what is our gray color, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, jog my memory here. When I do the center of the P, this part of the P will need to be gold, and
Yes.
this center piece will need to be gold, correct?
Just a rim of it. Yes.
Just a rim of it, not the whole center.
Not the whole. Well, let me see if I can find that picture.
Yeah, gosh, I wish I could remember. Let me look. Let's take a peek here. Let me see if I can import my bitmap. It may be in my downloads. Oops. Let me go into my downloads here. I think this might have been it. Oh, here we go, right here. I think I've got it. Yeah, let's go back into the 2D view to see that. Okay, so no, it's just the P is what's gold. The center of the P.
Oh,
Okay. I remember this was gray, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so what we're going to do there is we're going to come up to our layers panel because now the bitmap is in there. So we need to scroll all the way to the top here and turn that bitmap layer off. So that's out of the road. Okay, now that we're kind of back on track here, moving on to this. So let me, I want to select this, just this interior layer here. And I'm going to hold down shift. I'm going to select my G, my I.
no, you're right.
and then these guys here. So I'm going to do a Control-G, and I'm grouping that. So I'm putting those all together, like as in like one selection. And then I'm going to come into my pocket for with my 1/8 inch end mill. And then you can see this is only carving inside of here. So we have like our black outline, which is where our, like the big P will be, right? So we'll have the black outline. Are you following?
Yep, I am.
Okay, black outline, and then this line here and this line here, this will be our gray outline.
Right.
And then our gold will just, which is where we are right now, our gold will just be where you can see it's pocketed out.
Yes.
Okay, because there was no gold inside the interior of the P here.
The inside of the P is black.
Yes, yes, you got it. So if you remember, I turned on our main layer here, which is our first pour, so that's all black.
Yes.
And then we're carving in between here and not that. So between the
second layer.
Between here and here,
yep.
That's our gray. So
right.
if I turn off that and I turn this on, you'll see it'll just clean out that area. So you'll have your black in there already, but then you're going to go in with a profile and you're going to clean out, or I'm sorry, you're going to go out with a pocket, but it's only that narrow little area. And that's what we're removing that black, and that's where you're going to pour the gray.
And after that sets, we're going to hog out everything interior to that and make it gold.
Yes, you got it. Okay. So then I'll turn that off. So that's our gray layer. And then we'll turn this on, which is our, I'm sorry, not that, this here. I had it checked, but it wasn't moving. This you'll come back in with, I had an 1/8 inch end mill in there. And the reason I chose the 1/8 inch end mill was to save you a tool change. It may add a little bit of additional time, but it's up to you.
Okay.
So this will clamp. I personally liked using the 1/8 inch end mill, and the reason is because if you use the 1/4 inch end mill, all you're going to be doing is coming in and cleaning out this. You may save yourself 10 minutes. Then you're going to have to do a tool change, and then the 1/8 inch is going to have to come in here, clean up all these corners again, and then it's going to come over here and do this. That's why I just chose the 1/8 inch end mill, like a one and done kind of thing. Okay.
Yep.
So now your black is done, your gray is done. Now you can come in and do your gold, which is just actually, yeah. So if you, I was trying to think about this in a couple of different ways, because you're already doing your gold over here on the Boilermakers when you do the gold, and then letting it all dry and then doing the gray. So it's a little methodical thinking here. I like to work in order of operations. And the reason I did not put the interior of the P and the I and G, or the I and the G on the same layer as the Boilermakers, is because those are, if you remember, think back with me here for just a second. Let's look back up here. Those were profile cuts. Okay, so you're just going to do your gold there. That's just that. That's a different operation than a pocketing toolpath. If I wanted to, this is just, you kind of have to think outside the box here. If you wanted to, I could have selected, I could have grouped those two. No, actually that wouldn't have worked. Nope, scratch that. Don't listen to me. I recant everything I just said.
Okay.
Don't listen to me. All right, so we had our profile down here on the gold, and then we cut the gray, and we let it be done. Then we came in with a pocketing. And the reason that we couldn't combine, because sometimes you can combine toolpaths, but you can only combine toolpaths if you're using the same tool.
Right.
So if you could have a pocketing and you could have a profile if you're using like the same bit.
Why wouldn't you pocket you can call it an IG or you can call it a 10, because it's the same thing. It's a Big Ten logo. So it's a
Oh, I'm
BIG.
sorry. You know me, I'm not a basketball person, so please forgive me. Forgive my ignorance.
Why wouldn't you pocket that?
Why? Okay, say that again.
Why would you not pocket that?
We are pocketing that.
Well, I thought I heard you say you weren't. Okay, you are going to pocket that.
Yes, we're
Okay.
pocketing the inside of the P for the gold, and we're pocketing the 10.
Okay.
Not the IG. So
Yeah,
we're pocketing out the 10.
I got you. Okay.
All right. So that's why, like, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you really have to be like in that mind frame of what toolpath can I associate with what tool.
Yeah.
So if the 10 and the inside of the P had been like just another border, I would have chosen the 10 in the inside of the P if they were going to be like a profile cut with that same 60-degree V. But I'm not using a 60-degree V bit. I'm using an 1/8 inch end mill.
Okay.
So that's why you have to change the tools,
Okay.
or that's why you have different tools, different operations. You remember when I told you that this was going to be a little bit of an in-depth project?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, so it's a really good learning experience, but there is a lot that goes into it. So, all right, so that's where we're at there. Okay, the last toolpath that we have is our final gray pour, and it is going to also be at 1/8 of an inch because we have that center quart.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember we have that center quart circle.
Yeah,
So
that's
our
a different color completely, isn't it?
it sure is. And this was a little bit of a bear when it came to designing it, because if you remember, like these lines were like all over the map and everything
Yeah.
was really discombobulated. So we had to come back in with this gray circle. So everything at this point is cured. Okay, we've got everything fully cured. Now we need to come in and do our final pocketing with
Mhm.
our 1/8 inch end mill. I believe it was an 1/8 inch is what I chose. Yes. So I chose an 1/8 inch, and we are going to cut again down to that 0.25.
Hmm.
All right. And the reason I chose a 0.25 for this circle is because it is really kind of the heartbeat of the piece. If this gets carved too shallow and like, you know, like I said, it's the heartbeat of the piece. It's the center along with the P. It's like you want that epoxy to be, you want to have the right amount of depth for that to get, for the epoxy to
Yeah.
really set and cure with the other epoxy, because you are putting two pieces, two different layers of epoxy together, and you want to make sure that it has enough depth on it for it to fully cure.
Okay.
Okay. So, and again, you do not have to go, this is where those squirt bottles or syringes come in really handy, because you can just squirt a little bit of epoxy. Or what I like to use are, like, you remember like the little Dixie cups you used
Yeah.
maybe at like your grandma's house when you're like rinsing out your mouth or whatever when you're brushing your teeth,
Yeah.
and they're like cardboard. Those are fantastic. You can buy those at the dollar store too, because they're fantastic because you can kind of bend them and then just like pour, and then you can
Mhm.
just stop. All right,
Okay.
so that's where we're at with that.
When you sand this down, tell me what
Yes.
tell me what grit you do this with.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Are you going to do a flood coat on top of this, or do you want to leave it like just the epoxy and the natural grain of the wood?
Well, the court would have a more waxed look, so it would be nice to have almost a clear poly finish on it, if you will.
Perfect.
But you'd want to
That's
sand,
kind of what I was thinking too.
yeah, I think you'd want to sand that down first before you did that.
Yes. So the really cool thing about epoxy is as long as you're not just like globbing it on there and like going nuts with the epoxy and just overflowing everything. So like when you're pouring the black, really try to stay inside. I'm just going to highlight these toolpaths here. Really try to stay inside the areas that you're given for the black because
Mhm.
A, that's going to minimize your sanding, and B, that's going to minimize your waste on your epoxy and those materials.
So I guess thing to do then to make the wood a little bit wider and a little bit longer to leave a little barrier there on the sides and ends,
Yes, I think that that's a fantastic idea.
and just cut that away later on the table
Mhm.
saw.
You got it. That's what I do with like 90% of my projects.
Okay.
It's always best to have a little bit extra than not. Um, so with that being said, if you want, so little kind of like Vectric hack, you can kind of like, I like to sometimes trick the system. So right now we've told it it was what, an 18 by 38.
Yeah.
So if you cut your piece equal distances um, on the horizontal and then equal amounts here on the vertical, like you've already got a little bit of extra space here
Hmm.
on either side. So if you just added, a
And
half an inch or whatever, and then put that in there and still cornered off, it would still go to the center of the material because it really thinks you only have an 18 by 36 piece of material. So if you're
sure.
putting a bigger piece of material, it's still gonna carve in the center.
And if I wanted to downsize this, I know how to do that in the um, thing, but what will that do to the tool paths and the sharpness of the lettering?
I am going to be very honest with you. I would not do that.
It would not.
I absolutely would not. And the reason being is because I tailor made this file like around the P and the offsets. So
Hmm.
then that 1/8 inch bit it would have just enough room to go in and do its jam.
Got it.
So if you were to downsize, you would be responsible for going back into the file and saying, okay, now we're going to be using a 16th degree V bit and going in. And
Yeah.
really, I think um, that takes away from like the entire project because you're making this like really incredible project. Why would you want to make it small?
Well, the real reason is if it's going to be functional, like for not for a cutting board, but for a presentation board for like a wine and cheese party. I think
Yeah.
some people think that's a little bit big unless you're going to have a lot of people over, but it's a little cumbersome. It's just a little big
Okay.
would have to store and
Store it, baby. We're gonna put some keyholes on the back of this thing and we're gonna hang it up on the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wall. I mean, this is gonna be a work of art.
So you're gonna do a keyhole cut on the back too, or
Well, that's gonna be up to you.
yeah,
You can get your router and your jig out and just pop in a couple of keyholes. But I mean, all honesty, John, this is going to be a work of art. This is not something you're going to want to like slide in the cabinet at the end of the day. This is something you're going to want to put proudly because the one thing I know, I'm not personally a big Purdue fan, but I have a ton of family from the IU side of this.
I'm gonna do another one
Um,
for you.
yeah, we're going to do the IU court too. So, we'll get to do this again. But anybody that's a true Purdue or IU fan, they have their stuff everywhere. Like
Oh yeah,
they are proud. They
yeah,
are loud and proud if they are Purdue or IU. It's like
yeah.
Wabash and DePaul. I'm from Greencastle, so DePaul was like our big rivals. DePaul or Wabash was, and those two are just as obnoxious as Purdue and IU. Which
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into the rivalry thing. All mad respect to anybody who's from any team.
Yeah.
Um, so I understand what you're saying about the 36 inches being a little bit big. Um, you know, I do hear you on that, but I really would encourage you or whoever is put some keyholes on the back of this thing and
Okay.
allow them to like clean it off and then put it like maybe in their bar area or up on the wall or something, a really unique place. And then it's a multi-purpose item. It really it takes the gift from just being a plain Jano gift to also a work of art that can be displayed all year round.
Mhm.
Because if I got this, I would definitely not want to put it like in a cabinet. I would be worried to death that it would get like nicked up or,
Yeah.
boogered up.
Would you put feet on it? Those little rubber corner.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. The only thing I would just be really careful with is make sure, because obviously this is a bigger piece. So you could put the rubber feet on them. I would maybe do them a lower profile foot.
Yeah, that's what real low for.
Yeah, I would do a real low profile on it. And then that way, like if you do choose to put a keyhole slots in the back of it to hang it, then that way the nail doesn't have to be, like 2 inches extended out
Hmm.
from the wall.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I guess if they're using anchors, like it really wouldn't be that big a deal, but you know, it's something to consider. But unfortunately for this project, I would not downsize it. And the reason
Okay.
I say that is because A, like you said earlier, the Katy court is so small.
Yeah.
You have these half moons that are eighth of an inch, and then we have all of this layering here. So, sometimes when you downsize things, you really start to lose the detail in projects. So
Yeah.
I feel like this is a pretty cool project. Like, don't discount that. This is not something that your buddies could go, like your fishing buddies could go to the store and buy. Like this is a one of a kind piece. When other people see this, they're going to be like, holy crap, like that's amazing. So
Hmm.
like that really cool IU flag that I did that I kind of showed you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've been posting about it on my Instagram here recently, trying to get show people how I made it. But it's that big IU flag. It's got the stars. It's kind of got the tattered flag, and then it's got the big IU emblem, and then it's got the white like crimson around it and the white stars. And then I put a flood coat on it, so it's like really super shiny. And then I put a black frame around it, so it just looks like
I thought about
incredible.
doing this too, but I'm gonna wait and see what it looks like till I make that decision at the end.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
but as far
what-
as I think you're onto the right finishing, because I think that's going to be 9/10 of the battle as well. Since you are using different types of wood and you're going to glue those all together, the biggest thing that you want to do before you do any of this type of carving is you want to surface your piece.
yeah.
Right? Okay. So either drum sander, planer, surface, whatever your preferred method is. Just make sure you get the piece completely level, and even take a level to it when you're on the CNC, and make sure that it's square, because you are going to be doing V carving. And so if the surface is not perfectly flat, you're going to get really inconsistent results with that V carving.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
got all that, so we can make it completely flat.
Perfect. Perfect. That's fantastic. Um, as far as finishing, you had talked about surfacing the piece. I don't know, like I said, I don't know that I would surface this. I really,
You'd sand
I
it.
mean, you can if you want to, because here's what can happen if you don't overfill the piece like a little bit. What will happen is the epoxy will settle down into the grain, and then you'll kind of have just like a really slight little like dip
Mhm.
almost. So, I'm going to retract my statement earlier. Stay in the lines, but maybe do just like a little bit over, to where it's just maybe just a little bit flooded over the top.
And
Okay.
allow yourself to
Just,
sand it off, sand it flush then.
yes.
So when
Yeah.
you
Or
did
you can
that,
drum
what,
sander or whatever.
yeah, we have both, but what would you start with in terms of, would you start with 100 grit, 80 grit? I've
Um,
sanded epoxy before, so how does that,
so you're really lucky when it comes to colors, because you're working with black, gold, and gray. So the biggest trick when you're sanding stuff like this, excuse me, let me grab a quick drink here. When you're sanding things like this, you really want to be mindful of not overrunning. So if you're sanding the black, right, you're going to sand all the black, which is fine at the end. Stay around the outer perimeter. And then when you get to like the P and the 10 that are the lighter colors, swap out your disc and make sure that you're changing your sanding disc, because what can happen at that point is if you don't, some of that black, like if you're using a rougher grit, what can happen is it can
Oh,
actually create like little chips
yeah.
in that gold, and then you'll have like little black flecks, and then you're going, great, now how do I fix this?
So you're saying don't use a drum sander then? You're saying use a handheld oscillator.
Yes, for the first initial, like if you want to run it through the drum sander and there's a bunch of epoxy on the top of it, by all means, like that's fine. But when you're doing your finishing work, like say
Yeah.
you've got that black everywhere and you're just, you know, everything's like the I and the G aren't that like over flooded, the drum sander should be okay. But I would definitely, when you're doing your finish sanding, like I usually do start, I'm trying to think. I usually start between 80 and like 120. I think for this, if you're not going to do too much on the black, you could get away with 80 and then work your way up to 120, because that's what I'm saying. Like with the P and the 10 that are the different colors, I would work with your higher grits because you don't want to risk chipping that color and getting other
Yeah.
colors in it.
Yeah. Okay.
These
Well,
things are so finicky,
yeah.
like almost to the death. Like they will make you crazy mental.
Hmm.
Like because and I'm telling you this from experience because I did that on my IU flag. I was staying around the edges. I was doing my darndest to like be really careful. And of course, my orbital sander went right over part of the white now on that cream on my IU flag. And I'm like, for the love of God. And I had like all these like tiny little nicks. And so
Hmm.
then I had to go back in, get my syringe, fill it all back in with the cream color, and then sand all that down. Heaven's sakes, I thought I was going to lose my mind.
Ha.
So I know. I'm telling you from experience.
So
Luckily,
you can repair it with some colored epoxy, is what you're saying.
yes, yes,
Okay.
you can easily repair it with that. But I work from 80 grit, 120. I think yeah, I can't remember if they make a 160. I think they do. 160, 180, and then 220. And then from there, um, you can, oh, the other big thing about with epoxies I want to tell you is in between each sanding, make sure you're wiping it off.
Yeah.
Wiping it off with alcohol. Like put some on
Okay.
like a lint-free rag, like a shop rag or something.
Okay.
Okay. And clean off all the dust in between each sanding. That's really important.
Okay.
Um, and then once you get up to 220, you can use, you can even go up to 320 if you really want it to shine. What I like to do is actually have a buffer, and
Hmm.
I use I'm trying to remember, it's like a car polish
Yeah,
that
use
I
car
use.
polish.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's like that. It's not, hang on one second. Let me grab,
Mhm.
um, hang on one second. I believe it's the McGuire's brand.
Yep. Yeah, I've got their
Perfect.
fine cut and their anti-swirl.
Yes. Yes, the McGuire's is the perfect method. And then you can use a buffer and buff the epoxy if you want that done. And then you can use for your wood. This is kind of like my go-to. Okay. I get a bucket and I get some mineral oil and I will just submerge the whole deal in there. Okay. You can submerge the whole board because what happens is if you use, um, now, of course, let your McGuire's dry for 2 or 3 days or whatever and get kind of polished. And then you can put the mineral oil on it and then you can kind of go back and buff it up. But what happens is that mineral oil, if you're just like, or you're putting like an Odie's oil, like butter on it or something, it tends to dry out and
Mhm.
it doesn't, that it doesn't sink into the core of the wood. So that mineral oil, I usually let them set for like 2 to 3 hours and then pull it out, and then you can kind of wipe it down, clean it all up. And then once that's kind of mostly dried, maybe 24 hours, then you can go back and do your buffing if necessary. I don't personally like to use polyurethane over the epoxy, is because no matter what you do, you're going to have a brush line, or you're going to see some type of like sealant on the top of the epoxy. And it doesn't have that like really pretty like polished look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to try it and just do like a polyurethane coating, you can. The other thing you need to be really mindful of, a couple things. I know there's so much information when doing these projects. It's just like fire hose. So I'm so sorry for all that. That's why I record these sessions. So then you can go back and kind of be like, what did she say? You mentioned using these for food. So you need to use a food safe epoxy.
Yeah.
And tube mineral oil you can use is food safe. Okay, when you're using polyurethane, not food safe. Okay, I know there's a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk epoxy really quickly.
Okay.
I use liquid glass is what
Liquid
it's called.
glass. Never heard of
Liquid
it.
glass. Yes.
I don't know that word.
And I can actually send you a link for the liquid glass, what I personally use. It is designed for 1/4 inch pour at the deepest and 1/8 inch pour, or less, if you will. But you don't want to pour any more than like 1/4 of an inch. Now, I had your black epoxy is set at 0.26, which is perfectly fine, like no big deal. Okay. But the
Okay.
liquid glass is my personal favorite. And I say that because I like how it mixes with the paint. I've used a couple of other epoxies. I've used like the Just Crow, like the Maker's epoxy. I don't like how that mixes with paint. I'm trying to think. There's another brand you can buy at Woodcraft. Alumilite. I'm not a big fan of how the Alumilite mixes with paint and how it cures. It just doesn't do it for me. But the liquid glass really does a nice job
Okay.
on it.
Okay.
That it really does a good job. So, of course, I'm here. If you have more questions, you've got my number.
Yeah.
And I would definitely love to see, progress pictures if you have questions, or you're like really getting into it and you're like thinking through all the things and you're like, hey, like walk me through this. Just give me a shout, shoot me a text or give me a call. Let me know.
I won't start it for a couple of weeks. I'm gonna be out of town. And I think
That's all right.
what I'm gonna do the first time is run it through on a sheet of plywood or something, just to see how the tool path runs without
Hmm.
you tearing up a
A
expensive piece
very
of
nice
wood.
piece of wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably very smart. Yeah. And if you've got, you could even just do, if you wanted to use some epoxy, I mean, try it out.
I think I would just see how it all works out, the whole flow
I'd
work.
probably say in total, now you can get on um, like Google and find like an epoxy measuring calculator, like the width and the ratio of how much area you're going to be covering. But if I had to guess, I'm going to say you're probably going to use between 22 and 24 ounces for the black,
Mhm.
for that first pour. And then the gold outline, I mean, you literally can mix up, like, that's why I said, I don't even know if I have any left. You can buy them on Amazon. Oh gosh, dang it. I don't even have any left. I'm terrible. It's the end of the year, or it's the new year. I haven't restocked from the mad rush of
Christmas.
everything Christmas. But you can buy measuring cups, like epoxy measuring cups on Amazon. I'd probably say you're going to need maybe uh, maybe six ounces for the Boilermakers, like this outline here. Maybe 8, because this is
For
pretty
gold.
big. Yeah, I'd say between 6 and 8 for the Boilermakers.
Okay.
And then the Gene Katie, oh gosh.
That's black again.
Yeah, that's black. Yeah, yeah, we talked about putting those two together, just changing the bit. So you'll have that. The gray outline is so minimal, 2 ounces, unfortunately. Or if you want to get if you do want to get the measuring cups, those are really nice. Or if you have a food scale, that's even better. You can pour the epoxy, then you can do like a 1/2 ounce and a 1/2 ounce. You just want to make sure that your measurements are on target, because it has to be a 1-to-1 ratio or it'll get all boogered up.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah,
I think that's it then.
yeah. And I think the gold would probably be maybe 3 to 4 ounces,
Okay.
because you're pouring at 1/4 of an inch thick. And I know that sounds like a lot, but
Yeah.
these are just things I've kind of learned.
Yeah.
Because other thing, last and final thought here. When you're mixing the epoxy, if it says mix for 3 minutes, add your 2 additional minutes, slow. Do not use the little drill with the little thingy on it. No, don't do that. Creates too many bubbles. Also, let the epoxy rest for 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, so stir it up, set it to the side, set a timer, whatever you got to do. Please let it rest for 3 to 4 minutes. And then you can take your heat gun and you can just pop the bubbles on the top. That's going to create a lot less bubbles.
Okay.
Okay.
And you still have enough pour time to?
Yes. Yes, because you have, I think, 60 to 90 working minutes.
Oh, that's different. The epoxy I use
Yes.
around here is about 10 minutes max. And
Oh, no, this stuff's really nice. Yeah, it's really nice. Last thing, when you're doing things like this and you don't want to use a heat gun, because most people will tell you use a torch to pop bubbles. You don't want to use a torch because you're using that really beautiful wood and you don't want burn marks. So no torch. No, bad. Heat guns are used for moving epoxy. Okay, so if you need to move it or flow it or whatever, do that. But if you want to pop the bubbles, you can get a 91% alcohol CVS wherever, put it in a spray bottle like you wet your hair with, and use that, just mist, and that will pop bubbles.
Oh,
Then that way you don't have to pop the bubbles with your heat gun. And then that way, because you got to think when you're doing that, Boilermakers, and it's just it's in there and it's so fine, you don't want to be blowing it all over the place. Just a couple spritz. Don't go nuts with the alcohol, but a couple spritz to pop the bubbles is fine.
okay. And what
All right.
alcohol was that?
91% isopropyl.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, 1.5 hours. I think we've figured it out.
Yeah.
3 days of 2 to 3 days, different sessions. I think I spent about probably 6 hours total on this whole.
Wow.
Yeah, design, layering. Well, I mean, you can see there's a lot that goes into it.
No doubt about it. No doubt
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely. All right, sir. Well, I just want to say to our peeps watching this, thank you for tuning in. John, thank you for being such a good sport and allowing me to share this on my YouTube channel, because I feel like so many people are going to be like, that's how you do that. So thank you for allowing me to share your project and asking the questions, because I'm sure what you're asking and what you've asked are what so many other people are asking as well. So, all right, sir. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our session. And did you have any other questions for me?
No, I don't think so. Not for right now.
All right, awesome. Well, you have the file, and you know how to get a hold of me if you have any questions in the meantime.
All right. Thank you, Kate.
All right. Thanks, John. I'll
Okay.
see you soon.
Bye.